Hello and welcome to Parallels, the Free Play Showcase. Hello and welcome to Parallels, the Free Play 2020 Showcase. I'm Chad Toprak, Director of Free Play, the world's longest running independent games festival. And I'm super excited to be here with you tonight. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that Free Play hosts and broadcasts from the stolen lands of the Wurundjeri and Boon Wurrung people of the Kulin Nation. I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past, present, and emerging, and to all First Nations people who may be joining us live today or tuning in later. Sovereignty was never ceded, and the violence of the colonial project is still ongoing. So hello and welcome to Parallels 2020, Free Play's annual showcase of independent games and experimental art. If you're watching this live, you can join us at the Free Play Parallels Zone, a complimentary online social space set in the capital and created by the lovely Jay and Cecile. You can find the link in the chat. If you're already in the zone, give us a big woo. The hashtag for tonight is Parallels20, and you can also use the Migwa20 hashtag alongside it. A bit about tonight's format. We have a curated selection of 9 artists, game makers, writers, and designers who will take turns presenting a short talk about themselves, their projects, and their journey through their creative practice. Some of the speakers will be playing their games live, while others will simply present a short talk accompanied by slides or video. Short talks, heartfelt games. This is the very essence of Parallels. Parallels highlights some of the most unique, personal, and culturally significant work being made in Australia and beyond. The host of Parallels, the Free Play Independent Games Festival, is a celebration of independent games culture, spotlighting and platforming emerging and marginalised artists, championing Australia's leading independent game makers, and exploring the vital margins of independent, alternative, and experimental games. For over 16 years, Free Play has been encouraging critical, personal, political, and cross-disciplinary dialogue and artistic engagement. Free Play is committed to fostering an inclusive, positive, and playful culture and promoting game making as arts practice. We wouldn't be able to host these wonderful events without the amazing support of our community and our partners. So I'd like to take a quick moment to thank a few people. First off, I'd like to thank RMIT and the lovely people at the Capitol for all their support and for blessing us with such a beautiful venue. I'd like to thank Creative Victoria and Melbourne International Games Week for their support and for having us on board as an official Games Week event. I'd like to thank the Free Play team, Ben, Jeannie, Pradika, and Goldie for all their hard work and for putting on such an amazing event. I'd like to thank the Parallels Zone team, Jane Cecile, for creating something so special and so beautiful. Thank you to Mohammed for the wonderful Parallels visual identity that you see this year. And thank you, Dan, for cutting together such a kick-ass trailer. A big thank you to the Free Play board for their continued support and guidance. And finally, a massive thank you to everyone who bought support passes for this year's Parallels. Your support means a lot to us and really makes a big difference. So from the bottom of our hearts, thank you. Support passes are still available if you'd like to contribute to Free Play, and you can find the link in the video description. And so without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker. Joining us from New South Wales is Tali Faulkner. Tali is a Ngaitarangi designer living in the Northern Rivers. His work before making games was with community language revitalization. Tali will be presenting Umurangi Generation, a first-person photography game. Over to you, Tali.
better unmute that, or else it'll be a little bit awkward. Can everyone hear me okay? Yeah? All right. Let me just start sharing my screen here so it's not a boring talk, I guess. All right. Can you see that coming through? Yeah, I'll just pull the chat up. All right. So I've got some notes here just so I don't go and waffle on for too long. But this talk I'm going to give today is a little bit about Indigenous knowledge and game design. So my name's Tyler Faulkner. I made Umurangi Generation. It's a photography game set in the shitty future. And this talk's mainly going to be really if you've played the game and you kind of know what's going on, you'll get the most out of it, but I'm not going to spoil anything either. So if this starts to captivate you or, you know, you're just fawning over yourself, go play it. It's only $20 dues, so it should be good. Where's my slides? Oh, there we go. Okay. So I might just acknowledge, I'm on Bundjalung country presenting today, so I'm just going to acknowledge and pay my respects to elders, language holders, custodians, and the families that are here. So where do you start with Indigenous knowledge? That's a term, I guess, that's sort of come up a little bit lately in the academy, and it's going through a little bit of like, you know, like a K-pop phase where you got a lot of people saying the words, but they don't exactly know what they mean. So maybe the best place to start with talking about all this stuff is to just define what that is, get that over, and then we can talk about the rest. So let's have our existential nightmare and talk a little bit about epistemology. So Indigenous knowledge really is just a difference in epistemology to Western knowledge. Epistemology is kind of like the origin of knowledge and, you know, how do you know, like where does knowledge come from? And for Western epistemology, that's kind of, or, you know, Western knowledge, that's, you know, knowledge exists between your ears. And the smartest people, that's where the smartest knowledge comes from. It's all about sucking that out and giving that to people. So Indigenous knowledge, that's based outside of someone's ears, and that's obviously going to change depending on who you're talking to. And the idea is that, you know, knowledge has agency and, you know, it exists in that space, not in your ears. It's not inferior or primitive, it's just different. This is just a different epistemology to Western epistemology. So moving on from that, what do you see? We had our bushfires in Australia, and this is a photo I took. So what do you see? Just think about it for a moment. What you're actually looking at there is a river. And this river, all right, is somewhere we actually grew up next to. I've been in Australia for a while, you can probably tell. And this river, when these bushfires hit, was gone, pretty much completely gone. But for me, that wasn't the scariest part. The scariest thing for me was seeing how predictable neoliberalism talked about this. If you noticed, after the bushfires, and for all the international viewers, after this COVID thing came out, there was a lot of talking around the issue. So these posters, they're mentioning the fire, but they're not mentioning what caused the fire, which was climate change. And yes, the science is already in on that. It's not up for debate. If you talk to a firefighter, they'll say the drought season's getting longer and the safer time to do the burn-offs is getting shorter. So I was pretty much thinking about that all of last year because my mum's house got burnt down. We went out behind the blue tape and I thought to myself, how can you talk about something that's happening right now with something like this and not just making it a shit show of like lame social commentary? And the place I think I arrived at is you go cyberpunk, the genre that is, not the expensive game coming out this year that's going to sue the shit out of me if they see this slide. Well, anyway, so you see, cyberpunk as a genre has its foundation in the 80s, all right? So if you look at all of the cyberpunk tropes and things like that. They're essentially the 80s. You know, you've got mega corporations that, you know, rule the world, do all the shady stuff. So the 80s. You've got, you know, drugs like the crack epidemic. You've got, you know, racism like Ronald Reagan, a literal racist as a president. And you've got all the steroid fueled machismo of things like Arnie and Rambo and all that. That all goes into cyberpunk from the 80s. So, you know, when you look at the cyberpunk trailer coming out, it's very 80s, and that's because that's where cyberpunk belongs. So how do you make a cyberpunk that is about today in 2020? Well, maybe the easiest place to look for that answer is you just look at what's happening in 2020. We've got an extinction event where it's too late to prevent. We've got neo-fascism and crypto-fascism running rampant online and offline. We have an economy that's fucked for anyone who didn't inherit massive amounts of wealth. Cops are a tool of the state, and so on. And then you add like this neoliberal layer to it that, you know, we talked a little bit about earlier with the Domino's pizza ads and things like that. And we get all these other little factors that start to play into what a 2020 cyberpunk would look like. And so that's where I wanted to go, but how would you do it in a game? Well, I was actually trained by a Wiradjuri designer, Professor Norm Sheen, and he taught me respectful design, which is a process of design where it says that the designer is actually not the most important person in the room, and that knowledge, you know, the stuff that Western knowledge says exists between your ears, actually exists out in community. And, you know, the best answer comes from community. So when we talk about a game, maybe the game or the designer is actually not as smart as the players playing. And actually they don't have the answer on what is or isn't a good photo. So when we're making this game, the idea is that we take a really hands-off approach and we say, actually, we're just the tools that you can use to make your photos and not tell your own story, but figure out what's going on. And so the player creates photos with their own agency, and they're just put in a space to explore what's going on. And I think if you give players that creative freedom, they're going to piece together the things at their own pace, and they're going to walk with their own pace. And when it comes to these issues that might seem controversial and scary to put in a game, because we all know people don't like politics in games, but if you let them walk through it and explore it at their own pace, they're going to be the ones that make that call in the end of what the game's about, or they're going to be the ones that take a message away that's personal to them. And so with all this stuff, you know, we've had a lot of players play the game and take their photos. And you can start to see that when these players are given this creative agency, they're able to create in a way that expresses themselves. So there's one from one photographer who played the game. Or not photographer, just a player. You know, this person said they had no photography experience. And then we have another one where another person took some photos and they got a completely different look going out of it. And then we had this one, you know, people playing it as well. And the thing around all this is that because this is a game where you slowly unlock things with your photo equipment, you're going to, you know, start to, I guess, learn photography skills. And part of that is we've seen a lot of players that have started off saying, I'm not an artist, I'm not creative. But because we've given them, you know, agency to do what they want to in this space, they've actually come away not just saying, they start with saying, I'm not creative, it's just the game making me think that. By the end, they're taking photos that, you know, no one's ever seen before. And then some of them after that are saying, I want to pick up a camera in real life. So I think that's the power I think that giving agency to your players sometimes can get. I'll show a few more here because I'm pretty sure I'm coming up to my 8 minutes, but yeah, they're just really nice, you know, and giving players something to take away at the end of your game like this, I think is a really good thing. So all this stuff, and people who've played the game know what I'm talking about when I say this. It's about just positioning players to see what's there for themselves and walk away with it for themselves. And part of that is just saying that we're not going to preach to you, and we're not going to say this is what you should or shouldn't feel. We're just going to position you in a way to where you can see it with your own eyes. And that's essentially what this game is all about, is getting players to see something with their own eyes and walk away at the end with their own thoughts on the subject. And we've seen that happen with a lot of players who came out of this who weren't in the bushfires. They were in COVID, but it still fit. Because, yeah, at the end of the day, it all comes from the same beast, doesn't it? So, yeah, that's my talk. I kind of had to cram that into 8 minutes, but yeah, if you want to contact me, there's the details. Just shoot me a DMM and Discord there if you want to show us some of your photos. But yeah, thanks. How'd I do for time?
Yeah, no, that was great. It was all right. It was pretty good. Thank you so much for that, Tully.
No worries.
All right. So up next, we have Faye Dawn joining us with a pre-recorded video. Faye is a game developer and lecturer at SAE Melbourne. During the day, she teaches, while at night, she can be found frantically writing in her studio. She's obsessed with the idea of communicating feelings and experiences through immersion and interaction, which is at the heart of the game that she's presenting tonight, The Stranger Next Door.
I sat for a long time trying to decide what I wanted to talk about here, what got me really excited about this project. So let's talk about what led me here first. Have you ever played Lifeline? When it came out, it was the first messaging game to break it big, and they had this wonderful delay-based system where the main character would tell you that they'd contact you in an hour because they had a long walk ahead of them. And then they did. It absolutely blew my mind at the time. This simulation of time passing and real-world communications we use every day. But eventually, they asked me a question, and I must admit, I got distracted by a work meeting, only to come back to the game 3 days later to find the character locked, frozen in time until I answered. I was talking to friends at the time about it, excited by the idea of taking this delay system further, emulating time and communication, just to make the whole thing run in real time. I remember one person in particular telling me it just couldn't be done. And even if you could do it, why would you? And thus, this game was originally fueled on the twin pillars of curiosity and spite. Take that, Kyle. The game quickly became focused on the idea of replicating experiences and playing with expectations. Let me tell you a little bit more about the game. So, The Stranger Next Door is a real-time, story-driven, meta-narrative horror game that runs on a fake social media. I've said that sentence so many different ways that it's entirely lost meaning. So let me break it down. Basically, it's a game that runs on your phone in tandem with your life over 5 days, locked to both your local time and your location. Yeah, your location. Because it turns out mobile phones grab an awful lot of data about their user, and it's really easy to access that information. Things like the location, the social media accounts you're logged into, the position of the mobile, like, are they holding it? Is it flat on a table? How bright the room they're in is? How often they call their mother? Weave all that into a horror game. That's something really fun. But when you weave that into a real-time game, suddenly you have something that starts to feel a bit too real. It breaks the expectations that the player has on what the interaction should be. You can start to craft experiences that match ones that you have every day on chat programs like Discord and Twitter. You know, things like just simply making new friends with someone who you don't ever think you'll meet in real life. Jumping on their timeline, having a look at what kind of person they are. Waking up to find a string of messages left on your phone at 1 a.m. that start with, "Hey, are you awake? I need someone to talk to." You jump to their timeline and check if they've said anything pertinent there. There is a feed in this game as well as a messaging service. In fact, adding it was kind of fun, and it gives this ability to set up backstory as well as create non-time sensitive messages and lighthearted moments that would otherwise be impossible during a really frantic messaging session. But if you know me, you know that I get really excited about little details, those tiny little changes that make something sublimely better. So, let's talk about something simple. How do users reply to you when you message them? So, if you're looking at a typical game, you kind of either have a bit of a delay or you have a button press and then the message pops up. But first step, this is a messaging service. So instead of adding them without notice, you need a little is typing indicator, and that sells the illusion a lot better. But how long does that indicator last for? Well, let's take the average human typing speed, bumped up a little, apply that to the number of characters in the message. Okay, so we're getting somewhere here. Everyone types at a different speed though, and those delays, those is typing indicators, they kind of give you an idea of what kind of person they are. So every single character now has a unique typing speed. But also, no one responds instantly. They don't just start typing immediately. There's a little bit of thought that goes ahead first. So let's take a new value I've created called the thoughtfulness value. And that spells how long they delay until they start typing. Now we need some characterization for individual messages. So occasionally you'll get someone who writes out a message, deletes it, and then starts typing again. So you get this fabled is typing, it disappears for a second, then reappears as they second guess their whole conversation there. We need that. We also need modifiers. So some of these conversations, they'll be typing very fast because they're into it. Some of them say they're in a dangerous situation. They can't really rapidly type those out because they're trying to be quiet. We need modifiers for every single message. And this all reflects back on the writing of those messages too. Sometimes you need to drop capitals. Sometimes they type out a whole set of 3 sentences before hitting enter and dropping a block of text in front of you. Others, short, sharp, individual messages. And all of these together, they create these moments, these beautiful experiences that the players used to every day on their messaging systems. Moments that I grew up with, and moments that you probably all experience every day, especially if you live in Melbourne at the moment. So, The Stranger Next Door, in its own way, is a queer story. All of these characters are representations of the struggles I see friends going through trying to exist in queer spaces online. Things like the ambiguity of text, the problems with long-distance communication, maybe even returning to a smaller town after living away for so long and finding everything is exactly the same as you left it, to the point that you start focusing on the little things, the things that really bother and interest you because they're the only things that have changed. Maybe that town isn't as queer-friendly, and you visit your friends, only to find them dealing with the exact same issues that you left to escape. You did everything you could from a long distance, but it's really hard without being there. I'm sure some of you know what I'm talking about here. Well, that's what I'm working on. I hope you all found it interesting, at least. Honestly, this strange creature is something that I've wanted to create for years. And now that I actually have the opportunity to do it, I'm really excited just to plow through it. You can follow me or the game on Twitter for more information as we go through. It's going to be a strange journey. Thank you very much.
Welcome back. Thank you so much for that talk, Faye, and super looking forward to how the project spans out. Up next, we have Shastra Deo. Shastra is a writer, reader, and video game enthusiast. Her first book, The Agonist, won the 2016 Arts Queensland Thomas Shapcott Poetry Prize and the 2018 Australian Literature Society Gold Medal. Tonight, Shastra will be presenting Variations on the Word Ghost.
Thank you, Chad. I too wish to acknowledge that I live, work and play on the stolen lands of the Yagara and Turrbal people in Meanjin up in Brisbane, and pay my respects to elders past, present and future. Although colonial violence continues to this day, First Nations people have a long and unbroken history of storytelling that is essential to all the creative work we do. Cool. Hello, I'm Shastra. I am a writer who, sorry, let's get this going again. Yes, I am a writer who normally writes traditional page poems about video games, but in 2018, I met Tegan Webb. She introduced me to Twine, and my writing practice and my life probably changed quite a bit. So since then, I've occasionally been playing with Playful Works, messing around with different tools and trying to create poems within the boundaries of as many different digital forms as I can find. So before I start for real, I should probably include trigger warnings for ghosting, unstable relationships and dissociation. Feel free to mute me if you need to, it's all good. So Variations on the Word Ghost is a chatbot embodying the restless spirit of a distant friend. It was originally commissioned by Liminal as part of their Glitch series. They asked me for a poem, so I gave them this. Because ghosts to me are the most common and essential glitches that we experience in our daily lives. What is a ghost? A felt presence, a felt absence. What is a ghost? Something dead that seems to be alive, something dead that doesn't know it's dead. What is a ghost? A tragedy condemned to repeat itself time and again, an instant of pain perhaps, an emotion suspended in time, like a blurred photograph, like an insect trapped in amber. Ghost, noun, the outward and visible sign of an inward fear. How do you know you're a ghost? Is it like sleep? Do you feel old or young? The terrible thing about ghosts is that we know they are not there. Too often I have been a person who is not there. I am a serial ghoster. I don't know what I want or what I need from people, and I'm terrified of rejection, so I leave my friends before they can leave me. I think I am a better ghost than I am a human being. Most days I feel disconnected from my body, like a ghost moving from this life to the next. Some days I feel a lot of resistance to being perceived. So, as someone who hardly ever writes personal things, and as someone who hates being gazed upon, looked upon, corporeally perceived, in the literal worst move ever, I decided to make Variations on the Word Ghost. I came across this website, FutureLearn, and this free course on coding chatbots, which was offered by UAL's Creative Coding Institute. I promise I'm not a corporate shill, but on FutureLearn's website, the Creative Coding Institute also has a course on creating expressive video games, which is led by Phoenix Perry and Charlie and Paige. It's for total beginners, it's totally free, and it's just a godsend for people like me who are really interested in making small kooky things but have no practical knowledge or skills. I get this might not be the right audience for this, but if you know someone who wants to make something small in 2D in Unity and doesn't know how to code, it's just perfect and I totally recommend it. But anyway, Variations on the Word Ghost, the chatbot course. So I feel as though this project was led by the chatbot as a potential creative form. I took a lot of inspiration from the anime serial Experiments Lain, which had a formative but pretty damaging impact on me when I was a kid. If you've watched it, it opens with one of Lane's classmates dying, then sending emails to her peers, insisting that she lives on in the wired and her body was the only thing stopping her from making meaningful connections with others. She was a literal ghost in the machine. She'd uploaded herself to the cloud, and to me then and still now, that's just absolutely aspirational and legit goals. So I needed a voice for my chatbot's ghost. So I decided to read back tons, like literal tons of my old messenger messages. And on one hand, it was really good creative material. On the other hand, I have so much to talk about with my psychologist. But if it's something you have the inclination or the fortitude to do, it's super interesting. Like Faye was saying, I found with some people, I'd tend to chunk messages together. With others, it was rapid fire, almost stream of consciousness. The care and struggle we take with sending instant messages is just super fascinating and kind of horrifying to look at as well. So I was really confronted by the fact that I am a serial ghoster, and I knew that already. I was already aware of it, but seeing it like that was really hard. And seeing how many relationships I'd destroyed just because I was petty or I was in a mood, a capital M mood, or I hadn't expressed myself. That was really difficult. So to avoid looking at myself, I wrote and I played with code, and I tried to make something that was a ghost and a ghosting condemned to repeat itself time and time again. And I learned a lot from it, and I was horrified and I was glad. And I wanted no one to look at me or know me or remember me or think about me at all. And then I sent it off to my editor at Liminal Mag, because that's what doing commissions is like. I think variations on the word ghost embodies an aspirational me. It says things I couldn't say and probably still wouldn't be able to say. For the most part, it's honest, it's always true. I want to be a better human being than I am a ghost, and I just have to keep wanting that. So would I make this game poem thing again, knowing how it would end up making me feel? Probably not. But I'm glad I did it, and I'm glad I shared it, and I'm glad I keep sharing it, and I'm glad I'm allowed to talk about it. And sometimes I'm even glad to be a human being who can do all of those things. So there's no tragedy in that. I think I'll leave it there. Thank you so much for listening to me. I just have such mad respect for this Parallels lineup, and I'm very grateful that a goblin like me has been included. So thank you. Thank you.
That was great. I got goosebumps listening to it. So thank you so much, Chestra. Our next speaker is Helen Kwok, who'll be presenting with a pre-recorded video. Helen is a multimedia artist and designer who works at the intersection of art, design, games, and play. She considers herself a bit of a creative chameleon, having created playful installations, experimental games, and urban play activations. Her creative practice often involves blending the digital and physical and crafting work that extends beyond the screen. Tonight, Helen will be presenting a completely non-digital game called Street Tape Games, which is still being worked on, but is super fun and super exciting.
Hi everyone, my name's Helen and my pronouns are she, her. Yes, I am a multimedia artist and designer, and I'm also currently in my final semester studying a Master of Animation, Games and Interactivity at RMIT. And today I'll be talking about my project Street Tape Games. But first, just a tiny bit about my creative practice and background. I've worked on playful installations such as 100 Ghost Stories, which is an installation based on a traditional Japanese parlor game where players summon spirits from Japanese folklore. I've also worked on experimental games like Jump Jump Band, a multiplayer musical rhythm game inspired by the playground game Jump Rope. Also Sashiko, a meditative sewing game that uses a real needle and thread to sew patterns on a custom sewing circuit board. And finally, I've also worked on urban play activations, such as Heart Tree. It's an interactive tree installation that players can touch to connect with the natural and indigenous histories of Brunswick. So overall, my practice often involves blending the digital and physical together, creating experiences that play with physical bodies in space, plays with physical objects, spaces, and also places. However, today I'll be talking about my latest project, Street Tape Games. So, Street Tape Games is a temporary installation that uses social distancing tapes to create playful markings, boundaries, and patterns on the ground. These tape markings form a play space that the public can use to play a series of street games that have been redesigned with social distancing in mind. And the reason why I made Street Tape Games was pretty simple. It was a direct response to COVID-19. I'm originally from Perth. I had only moved to Melbourne at the beginning of last year. So when Melbourne went into lockdown, most of my family and friends were still back in Perth. I was going through all these feelings which a lot of other people felt, which were uncertainty and despair. I was also coping with a lot of changes in my life while trying to juggle the final year of my master's degree, and things were really tough. So working on Street Tape Games was a way for me to deal with this pandemic. It's an installation that focuses on the physical and social interaction between players, which were the things that I missed a lot during lockdown. It's an entirely physical installation without any technology embedded, and that's because I think we've all spent enough time staring at a screen or on Zoom calls, and I just needed to work on a project that I could look forward to playing after we emerge from lockdown. Another thing I noticed during the pandemic was this increased usage of social distancing tapes in public space. But when I saw these photos, rather than kind of feeling annoyed or turned off by these tapes, I actually found these markings to be very playful, almost like temporary game spaces that have been superimposed on top of existing public space. Seeing the tapes here reminded me of like playground markings on the ground, and that kind of got me started to think, well, what if I can create a play space that uses social distancing tapes, essentially subverting the role of these tapes from something that is usually used to isolate people and keep people apart to something that brings people together through play. And further questioning that, what if these tape markings can be used to play street and playground games that have been redesigned with social distancing in mind? And that's kind of how Street Tape Games was born. But I guess the big question is, well, how do we play tag when we can't tag each other anymore? When it came to the design of the games in Street Tape Games, I drew a lot of inspiration from Bernard de Koven's work around the well-played game. Bernard's philosophy was all about changing the game's rules rather than the players. He says it's not the game that's sacred, it's the people who are playing. And one of the techniques he suggests is adding, subtracting, changing, and borrowing rules from other games in order to change the game. So I've adopted a similar approach with Street Tape Games, changing the rules of traditional playground and street games slightly to incorporate social distancing as a part of their game design. For example, replacing the ball or any props, any body contact or touching between players with a different game mechanic. And I'm currently collaborating with Chad on the design of Street Tape Games. Here's a list of games that we've come up with so far, obviously all still work in progress. So we've got Tape Statues, a combination of the game's statues, touch color, and What's the Time, Mr. Wolf. Players have to freeze like statues on the right colored tapes on the ground. The COVID-19 Handshake. While players move around greeting each other with their newly invented COVID-19 handshakes, A murderer is amongst them, killing players with a secret wink. One Step at a Time, a variation of the game British Bulldog, except as a turn-based strategy game. The Eclipse Waltz, based on Bernard de Koven's original game Eclipse, but players have to keep 1.5 meters apart while aligning to their sun and moon players. Mimic Me Foursquare, where players battle it out Foursquare style, but rather than hitting the ball to one another, they challenge each other in a 4-player, Simon-like memory game of body actions and poses. And finally, Distant Whispers, where players sit 1.5 meters apart, have to try and pass a secret message along the line in a distant whisper. Finally, what's next for Street Tape Games? Well, obviously, one of the major challenges was not being able to playtest anything due to Victoria entering stage 4 lockdown. So the next phase of the project will be playtesting and refining all of these games once we are able to do so. If you're interested in playtesting and you're located in Melbourne, please get in contact or send me a DM on Twitter. And we've also secured some funding to further develop and present Street Tape Games next year. So the idea is to present Street Tape Games as a facilitated public play event where kids, families, and playful adults could participate in after lockdown. The idea is to encourage people to come outside and play again and connect with their community in a fun, active, and playful way. Finally, here's my contact details again. If you have any questions about the projects, please reach out. And yeah, thank you so much for listening.
Thank you so much, Helen, for that wonderful presentation. Up next, we have Dan Ferguson. Dan will be presenting with a pre-recorded video, and he's a soon-to-be game design graduate who focuses on making enjoyable, open-ended experiences with bright and colorful characters. Dan is a recent recipient of the Freeplay 2020 Student Game Award, and today we'll be presenting his game Completely Stretchy and Uncomfortably Sticky.
Hey, I'm Daniel. I'm a soon-to-be graduate of the RMIT Games course, and I'm extremely grateful to be here to talk a little bit about the game that I'm currently working on called Completely Stretchy and Uncomfortably Sticky. I kind of want to spend this talk going over what the game is, what it means to me, my process, and also a bit about some goals that I have for the future, be it for this game or just my personal goals. So yeah, I guess I'll just start by going over what the game even is. So this game is kind of like a wacky walking simulator, but instead of walking everywhere, you use your newly modified, extremely stretchy, elasticy body to stretch out and grab on stuff. There's not really any set goals in the game, as the player's free to just choose wherever they want to go and do whatever they want to do, but they are incentivized to speak with all the little funny NPCs, hopefully funny NPCs, that are hanging around the place. And I want players to use these interactions with the NPCs to try and piece together an understanding of the world that they're inhabiting and that these NPCs are living in. You can also find a bunch of little activities to participate in scattered around the world, and I kind of want to have these around to incentivize the player to want to keep exploring and finding more fun little things to just do throughout the world. And overall, I just hope that people enjoy exploring the space and vibing in the world. I want to talk a little bit about what inspires my work and what has inspired this game in particular. Growing up, I would love watching all the classic Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network cartoons like Ren and Stimpy, SpongeBob, Courage the Cowardly Dog, just all that stuff. And for as long as I can remember, I've just been doodling all these weird, funky characters everywhere. And if you look back through all my old workbooks from primary school up to high school, they're just filled to the brim with these drawings of just weird looking things. And I just really kind of like drawing funny stuff. Hopefully it's funny. But it wasn't kind of until midway through uni that I really started focusing on 3D art. And going into 3D art, I wasn't always really sure of exactly what I wanted to do. I wanted to portray my 2D style but in 3D, which I feel I still really haven't been able to fully realize, and is still something I really do want to try and do further down the line. A lot of my current work, however, is very influenced by the artworks of sci-fi artist Mobius, as well as a range of just artists that I've found online, such as Vargai. And the game Sable by Shedworks is also a huge visual inspiration for stuff that I make, as I really like the thin outlines that they use and the flat shaded colors that are present in the game. The influence design-wise for this current project, though, has come from a variety of places. The core influence design-wise would be from the game Sludge Life, which is a game about tagging walls as an emerging graffiti artist and speaking to all these weird and funny characters scattered throughout the world, kind of similar to what I want to go for. And I was a huge fan of the atmosphere and open-ended nature of Sludge Life. And with this game that I'm working on, I kind of wanted to take that freedom of exploration and just try and open it up even more by allowing the player to go wherever they want, whenever they want, and kind of take away the challenge and make it be more about just having fun and exploring with not much challenge at all. Another influence on this game's design would just have to be a range of shorter games, noticeably a short hike, as I found myself playing a lot more condensed experiences recently, mainly due to being a father of a 2-year-old and soon to be father of a newborn who, by the time this talk is up, is probably here. That's why this is pre-recorded. And not having a lot of time has moved me away from playing a lot of these long, cumbersome games that I would used to play, and I feel this has also influenced me to create shorter experiences for people who just want to jump into a space and have a bit of fun for a while. Because I'm a very busy boy, my process for making games is very cobbled together and rushed at the moment. I feel my process can be summed up quite well by a quote from Max Myers in his talk from last year, which was, "Game dev for me is about scrounging through the trash I've left behind from other projects." This is essentially how my current project I'm working on right now has been made. I've reused old shaders, scripts, I've been recycling models like crazy, and there was a lot of work put into making all this stuff work together in the beginning, as a good portion of the early development of this game was just trying to piece together all this trash from these previous uni projects and personal projects that I've been working on. But after all that was done, it kind of gave me the freedom to spend more time on the things that I enjoyed, and I did just enjoy aimlessly swinging around the world in the game, not really working a lot, but for real, it did really give me a lot of time to just focus on, okay, I guess, like bettering the art style, and it gave me more time to iterate on the design of the space, as the game has gone through a lot of changes level design wise. It started off very flat with not really much to swing on, and after having a few people play it and kind of moving away from the general influence of Sludge Life, I've made the game a lot more vertical and introduced this verticality so that players can really just get around the world quickly, and I really want to make players use the swinging mechanic because that is, I guess, the general appeal of the game. I kind of want to finish off by just talking about some of my goals for the future of this game, as well as my future as a designer and a developer. For this game, I'm still not 100% certain on what I want to do with it. I certainly want it to have a playable build that I can send to the public, and I do hope to have it be more polished and more complete as a nice piece of work, even if it means working on it in my spare time once I graduate and moving it away from being a uni project. I guess it depends on how burnt out I am by the end of uni. My personal goals now, however, are leading up to the end of my degree, are to find stable work and to hopefully begin fostering a career within games. Also, because I've done a lot of solo work recently, I'm generally looking forward to working within a team environment or working with other people, and I just really can't wait to meet new people once the lockdown's over and just have fun making games. Thank you so much for listening, and thank you so much to Parallels for having me. I'm extremely grateful for this opportunity to be able to talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for that amazing presentation, Dan. The game looks delicious, and I look forward to trying it out. Our next speaker is David Chen. David is a local game developer with an avid love for JRPGs, music, and Anycorn products. He's currently working on a fun little game called Spiritwell, an adventure RPG about a lost child who falls into a mysterious well. Spiritwell features at least one frog, I've been told. Over to you, David.
Wait, hold on. Are we going to do the video first?
Yep, video should be playing. All right, David, go for it.
Wait, hello. Am I live? Okay, hello. Yeah, that's Spiritwell. I'm not really good at talking about myself or the game. So actually what I thought I would do is switch it up a little bit. I'm really sorry that I didn't tell you about this, Chad, but I'm gonna do something that hasn't been done in Parallels before, I think. So before I start talking about Spiritwell, I'm gonna do something to kind of like lighten the mood and express what I'm feeling and how lockdown's been like. I got this in the mail recently, so I'm just gonna do this. And if you guys know the lyrics to this song, feel free to like join in. I promise I'll talk about Spiritwell afterwards.
Hold on, David, before you start, can you make sure you have your video muted so it's not...
Is it getting feedback? I'm sorry.
Yeah, just a bit, it's all right.
Okay. Oh my God. Yeah, if you know the lyrics, sing along. Today I don't feel like doing anything. I just wanna lay in my bed. Don't feel like picking up my phone, so leave a message at the tone. 'Cause today I swear I'm not doing anything. I'm gonna kick my feet up and stare at the fan. Turn my TV on, throw my hands in my pants. Nobody's gonna tell me I can't. 'Cause I'll be lounging on the couch, just chilling in my snuggie. Flip to MTV so they can teach me how to Dougie. 'Cause in my castle, I'm the freaking man. Oh, yes, I said it, 'cause I can. Today I don't feel like doing anything. Ba-da-da-da-da-da, I just wanna lay in my bed. Don't feel like picking up my phone, so leave a message at the tone. 'Cause today I swear swear I'm not doing anything, nothing at all. Except for this parallels talk I'm supposed to give. Anyway, hi, I'm David, and I'm making a game called Spiritwell. And I didn't really prepare anything for this, so I'm just going to talk about what comes to mind. Video games, Spiritwell, magic. Video games, like, I got into making games because, when I was a kid, I played this thing and I was like, wow, this is like crazy. It's like magic. You can press buttons on it and like stuff happens. And there's no battery bit. Anyway, I wanted to do that, and so yeah. Spiritwell, the reason why I'm talking about this is because, like, I guess it's kind of, I've realized it's kind of difficult for me to talk about what the game Spiritwell is or what it is that I try to make. And I thought about it for a very long time over the years. And I just realized, like, recently, not that recently, but like to kind of just like have fun making what you're making. And that was like the answer all along. I guess at some point, like, along the way of like making games, I started taking it too seriously, and it kind of took all the life out of it. And so I kind of had to like think back to when I was having the most fun creating games. And yeah, that's kind of what I want to put into Spiritwell, I guess. Just stuff that I think is weird or like interesting or funny. It doesn't have to like be about anything in particular, you know? And I realized like you can't really make games about anything in particular anyway, because like, well, you kind of can, but like in the end of the day, I mean, people take whatever they want to take out of, what they play and how they experience it. They bring their own experiences into it. Like no game's really finished until, somebody plays it. Because it's like a conversation, it's like a dance. So like, yeah, I wanted to kind of bring the magic back into it. Not just the playing of games, but the creation of it as well. And that kind of feeds into things like, so this is so disorganized, but it kind of feeds into like the creation of stuff like story, characters, scenes, and stuff like that. I went through a really long period of time where I just wanted to create like this really cool, perfectly structured and narratively sound story that made total sense and was symbolically like sound and stuff like that. But yeah, that didn't really, it kind of like hindered me a lot creatively, I found. So what I kind of went back to was like, what was it that I found really special about the video games that I played? And it was just those moments that you shared with the characters, like the player, the moments that the player shares with the characters, with the game, and how they interact with it. And kind of like just bringing back to basics, nothing too serious, doesn't like, even this, like the story now, even though I care a lot about like good stories and stuff, it's almost secondary to just kind of like having fun, being in the moment, that's a big one. Yeah, sometimes being in the moment too much is not that great, like how I didn't prepare for this talk. Sorry. Yeah, no, Spiritwell. Thanks for inviting me on as well. Oh, I forgot to mention, the music was done by Dana Yun, also known as Peko. She's an awesome, amazing musician from Melbourne as well. Yeah, you guys should definitely check her out. And I'm really glad to continue to be working with her for Spiritwell. And yeah, I think I got a few more minutes, right? I haven't been reading chat, but like, I was just gonna keep seeing if I ran out of things to say, but yeah, Spiritwell and the game. It is a personal game to me, and it's changed. It's evolved quite a lot as I've kind of like changed as well and grown, and kind of realized, oh, what is it that I actually want to make games about, or what is fun to me when making games, rather than kind of like, I used to describe it as like an RPG or like a JRPG or whatever. But like the thing is like there's not going to be any like traditional combat in it or anything. I just kind of thought about like when I played those games, what are the kind of memories that I kind of held for a long time afterwards? And yeah, just more of that stuff and less of the kind of stuff that I don't like, and just put it all in a game. And yeah, I hope you guys enjoy it when it comes out. That's all.
Great. Thank you so much, David, for that amazing performance. Caught us all by surprise, I think, but it was super wholesome. So thank you. Thank you for your time and for your game. And we'll look forward to where your game making journey leads you. Up next, we have Iris and Paul Anstey as Melting Parrot. Iris and Paul are husband and wife. Paul has a background in music and Iris in art. They started on their first game in 2018 whilst living on a farm in Tasmania, which eventually emerged as their current project, DAP. Over to you, Iris and Paul.
Yep. Hey, I'm Paul.
Hey everyone, I'm Iris.
And yeah, we're making a game called DAP. And we're just going to show you a quick video of it so you know what we're talking about.
Let's share that screen. Here we go. Oh, that was the wrong one. I think we're showing the wrong. Yeah. Is that all full screen for you guys?
Mm-hmm.
All right. Let's do it. Okay. Well, that was a game that was necessary for us to make.
So we didn't just sit down and say, hey, let's make this game called DAP. Instead, we decided to give making games a shot. Look, we hadn't made any games before that.
People usually say that you should start off with making a whole bunch of tiny crap games and then go from there and make something better. We sort of did that, but we also just never finished any of the crap games and instead kept working on them, and DAP is what emerged from that. So that means DAP is still our first game. We started off while we were in Tasmania working on farms, and we both were in a pretty bad place. We felt like we hadn't really succeeded in anything creatively, and me as an artist and Paul as a musician. So Paul says, let's make a game.
Yeah, so we haven't done anything like that before, so it can't be easy, right? Well, it definitely wasn't. This is what we made first.
So this is pretty funny for us, but
it was pretty bad. It was very ambitious. It was meant to have like breeding bacteria, and it was very complicated. And we realized pretty quickly we had no idea how to do anything like this. But some of the theme was carried through into DAP as it is now. So we realized pretty quickly how hard it was to make a game, but we kept working on it. We kept feeding it and growing it. We realized that we complement each other's skills really well. So we balance each other out. So if Iris gets to what I like to call soppy, I make sure it balances out and gets a bit more full on.
And when Paul says too many times, let's put more explosions in, then I also make sure it won't happen, which is basically me waiting until the phase is over. So, but how did it actually become DAP as it is now?
So people also say that when you make a game, you should nail down your vertical slice as soon as possible, right? Well, look, when we started this thing, we really had no idea what we were doing. We went through so many different mechanics and core ideas of what it actually is that you do in the game. We constantly changed mechanics and entire core gameplays. We kept making something even more ridiculous. So here's just a quick idea of how many different mechanics that were in the game at some point. So we had to figure out, what is this game we're making? What's important to us? And what are we actually trying to achieve?
We also realized that even though there were so many different mechanics in the game that we kept changing and completely changing whole concepts of it, there were some things that we never changed. One thing, of course, is the DAPs itself, which we established at some point and realized they're awesome, so we should keep them in the game. And another thing was that we always knew that there should be horror in the game. It's a bit of a different type of horror than some other people have talked about earlier, but horror gives for us a great excuse to put something really weird in the game and makes us not hold back to do just something completely unexpected and not just have a pretty looking game, but put a twist on it.
So look, we always knew really the exact kind of mood that we were going for with the game. So, you know, for the most part, it's quite pretty to look at, but together with the sound, we're creating a bit more of an oppressive atmosphere with an underlying fear, but also moments of euphoria. We realized that this was more important to us than the gameplay mechanics. Like, they are very important, but they're only pieces of the puzzle. And they're really just tools to make the mood the way that we want it to be. We also realized that we needed to play to our strengths. Maybe we can't make complex AI and perfectly balanced combat, but creating the mood came natural to us. And so the game became more focused toward the atmosphere than towards the complicated combat mechanics.
But why? The question is, why did we even spend so much time and energy trying to figure out what the game even is about? The thing for us is that it gave us something for us to put all our passion into and put all our energy into, something that wants our attention and something that gives us a purpose in life. Also, it totally combines the skills that we both have as artists, sound designers, level designers, everything that we do. And it makes us create something together as a couple.
So we both found that we love making games, and making games is really all we want to do in the future. Look, DAP is not a finished product yet. This is only part of the journey. It will continue to evolve and continue to give us purpose. In terms of the meaning of the game, we're basically discovering it as we go. I've started noticing parallels and metaphors in the game that mimic things that have been happening in society and in my own personal life. So basically we feel like we're kind of uncovering it as we go. It's something personally I've always done. I don't really know what I'm doing until I've actually done it. And after DAP is finished, hopefully we'll make another game.
We definitely will. Thank you so much. It's it's been really great to be invited to talk amongst so many awesome artists.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for that. The game is looking beautiful, both the visuals, but also the atmosphere and the audio in the game. I super look forward to checking out. So thank you, Iris and Paul.
Thank you.
So we're getting close to the end now. We've got 2 more games left in our lineup. Next up, we have Riley Neville. Riley is an independent developer from Brisbane who's been obsessed with the fuzzy border between ugly and cute since they first learnt to draw. Lately, they've been channeling that obsession into a game called Webbed, which aims to drag spiders and other creepy crawlies right over to the cute side of the divine. Over to you, Riley.
Hey, hi. I'm Riley, and this is...
I'm Noah.
Yeah. We're making Webbed.
Yes.
Let's bring up our slides.
Is it share screen?
Yeah.
Share screen.
Ooh. So, I'm the artist and programmer and one of the game designers on Webbed.
Yeah, and I'm also a game designer on the game, and as well as mainly level design, but I also just love spiders. And so as a content warning, we have spiders in this presentation, but most of them are cute, so yeah.
Mute it if you want, not mute, but turn off the video if you want.
Yeah.
So Webbed started off not really as a spider game. It started off as a grappling hook in this vampire game, which is kind of as far from the end product as we could get.
It's very different.
Very different. But this game was violent, and I was getting tired of it, and I still haven't figured out how to make it fun. So I decided to take a little break and take the fun grappling hook mechanic from this game and just put it in its own little prototype. So I was playing around with this thing. This is what Webbed started as. It was a couple of blocks and some physics-based circles, but it had a grappling hook and it had a parachute,
and it was fun.
And it was also basically a Just Cause 2 remake.
Yeah.
But I was playing with this and I was thinking it was really fun, and I wanted to show some people, but really, because this was a side project, the only people I could imagine really ever playing it were the people at Squiggly River.
Yeah, Squiggly River being our monthly meetup of game developers and game appreciators. It's online now, unfortunately, but it's much harder to play each other's games. But that's where we met a while ago, and I had been bringing this game called A Mess of Legs, this mess of legs you see in front of you, for like a year and a half probably. And people were enjoying it and having fun being in the chaos of the spider legs. The game, by the way, is you control individual legs of a spider to get to a goal. That's up to 8 players on 4 different controllers, sometimes sharing half a controller.
It's the most fun. Every time I went to Squiggly River, almost every time, people would just be playing this, just crowded into a small couch with a laptop in front of them, with just one hand, 2 people's hands on one controller, just playing this ridiculous game. And it wasn't polished.
No, it still isn't.
Still isn't, but kind of no one's games were. And that's like part of the beauty of these, like...
Yeah. That's what Squiggly was for.
Yeah, and that's what it still is for.
Yeah,
that's yeah. So I wanted to bring my little prototype to Squiggly River. And I figured I'd just steal Noah's idea of making a spider, because everyone seemed to like that. And I made my own spider. But because it was like for really wholesome people, and I just wanted everyone there to like it, I wanted to make it cute. And for reference, this is the closest I'd come to making a spider in a game before. these creatures from my last game.
Still cute, but
I think they're adorable. They're my baby, and I love them. Not everybody agrees with.
Yeah, which you can understand that one.
So I decided to make it cute, and just went full on the most classic cute you can get. You just big eyes, round body, little legs,
and fluffy.
And fluffy.
Which,
fluffy is important.
Fortunately, describes jumping spiders pretty much. As you can see, look at them. They're so adorable. Look at this cutie right here, and this one's precious. Look at him. And then this guy, he has great moves. You should see.
Yeah, we'll show you his moves, because if you don't know about peacock spiders, well, I'm glad to have brought them into your life, because they are just the cutest things.
Yeah, they are charming little fellows who love to dance for you, and they're so colorful and so expressive.
Oh, look at his girlfriend. There she is. She's turned up, and he's dancing for her.
Yeah.
They're the sweetest thing. They're native to Australia, and there's hundreds.
Yeah, there's of jumping spiders. There was over 6,000 varieties. Just insane.
Just like scientists are just now learning how many varieties of peacock spider there are.
Yeah.
So I modeled a little character of peacock spider, and I gave it little animated legs, and I spent a little time working on the prototype of this spider game. And this is like what it looked like when we were playing it at Squiggly River.
Yeah.
And people liked it. People liked it a lot.
Yeah.
A lot more than the vampire game I was making.
It was just this demo right here is what made me want to play and make the game. Like, I wanted to work on this. I was like, I desperately need to make levels for this game, because look at it. Look, it has so much potential in this state, and
that worked out really well for me. So Noah asked if they could make levels for this game, and I went, yeah, that's fantastic, because that means I can keep working on the vampire game I'm making, and and I can like flesh that out, and that can just still be my side project, and it can be Noah's side project, and Noah can get a bit more experience.
Yeah, a bit more experience is what I was looking for as well, and it just kind of grew and it grew.
It grew, and it didn't stay as our side project.
No, it didn't.
Neither of us. We realized that this is just the fun game that we should be making. So I want to just jump in and just show you what it looks like now. So this is the demo that we've just released.
Yeah, which is up on Steam now, but don't leave yet.
This is our little spider. She can swing. She can grapple with things. She's got a little pitter patter. You can hear a little pitter patter of her feet.
Yeah.
Make bridges. Bridges. Yeah.
Musical note.
You can just keep that.
It's just a wonderful tune. It was so helpful to make the spider playful and
we're
exciting.
Just trying to make her as cute as possible.
Yes. And like, it's making spiders cute is part of the goal, because like, in my opinion, especially, I already think spiders are cute, and like being able to see, like, show other people how cute spiders are is.
And surprisingly, not everyone thinks that way.
Yeah.
Since we started getting some people seeing the game on like Twitter mainly, I kept getting this one response, which is, I hate spiders, but I love this, which is strange to me, because this is a spider. This is what spiders look like. But it also meant, like, I think we were going in the right direction, because like we were making this cute little creature who people could relate to more than they could relate to real spiders. And I think that was working for me as well.
Yeah.
Because like, I never used to dislike spiders, but like, if a huntsman was in my house and I wanted to get it out, I would probably use a broom from a distance, because they're big and they move really fast. But the other day, for the first time since I started working on this game, there was a big huntsman in the house. And because I've been playing with this cute little spider, you're gonna eat the fly? Oh. Okay. Because I've been playing with this cute little spider for so long, I saw that huntsman just kind of hiding from my cats, and just thought, oh, it just wants to be outside. And like that empathy had built up just from completely unrelated but just similar experience virtually. And instead of like chasing it out with a broom, I got a bucket, and just let it out to the tree. And it's not just spiders. We've also got other friends.
Excellent moths, and we got a few somewhere. A big fly as well as the small flies. Let me go to the.
Do you want to talk to the moth?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Did you see that we were dancing with the moth? That's a key input in our game. You can dance with any of your friends, and they'll dance with you, because that's how making friends works.
Yeah.
In real life and in games. In this game, you'll be going around and you'll be making friends with other bugs to get help, but just to make friends as well. The main goal is to rescue your boyfriend, who is very much like the peacock spider we've shown you earlier, from a big bowerbird who's tip because it's blue. And you've got to make friends with all these bugs by helping them out, dancing with them, and
yeah, then they can help you on your rescue mission.
Yeah.
And also the spiders.
Oh yeah. So yeah, I mentioned it started off as a demake of Just Cause, and there's certain things that lasers are really useful for, and so kind of just had to keep some sort of gun, despite there not being combat in this game. You need to break some stuff sometimes. You need to destroy a web you've put up. So the spider has a laser arm.
Yeah.
The unique species of spider.
Which isn't a problem, it's fine.
Yeah, it's fine that spiders have laser eyes. This is laser spider. Yeah. Oh, here's a bee. The bee is a sugar bag bee. It's a native Australian bee. Like all the insects in this game are native to Australia. This bee wants you to collect pollen for it. Just, needs pollen. I don't know if we have time to find all the pollen for the bee.
Probably not, unfortunately, but you can go play the demo for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. So this is webbed. This is our cute little spider game, and if you really, really scared of spiders, which is fine if you can't just get to that immediately. Yeah. There's also an arachnophobia mode, so if you just want to somehow change the language to Japanese, which is just a testing thing.
There we go.
Wait. Yeah, resume. Cool.
There we go.
So yeah, it's just to help you get into it. You know, if the spider, even in all her cuteness, is too much, yeah, this is what we go. Yeah, that's webbed. Thanks for watching.
Do you want to show the last slide? Doesn't matter. Oh,
stop chat.
Thank you so much for that. What a fun and cute little game. I saw a bunch of friends playing it on Twitter today. There's a bit with a skateboard in there, and some people doing some really cool and wild stuff with a skateboard. Check out the demo if you're wanting to play it. I have my little cat Aslan here. He was getting a little restless, so had to just grab him and just hold him for a bit. Okay, we're up to the final game. It's a game by a studio from Malaysia called Salavolt Games. And our final presenter is Ishan Jayatilaka. Ishan is a Malaysian-born game artist who likes weird visuals and good stories. and is also the co-founder of Cellar Vault Games. Ishan will be presenting Short Creepy Tales, 7 p.m. Over to you, Ishan.
Thank you so much, Chad. Okay, let me just get set up. Okay. All right. Yeah, I think it's visible. So yeah, I'm just going to sort of restate what Chad said. Are my slides presenting? Yeah. Okay. Right. Sorry. Okay. Yeah, so just to restate what Chad said, hey everyone, I'm Ishan Jayatilaka, and I am the art department at Cellar Vault Games. We're a small studio from Malaysia, and today I'm not so much going to talk about as much as tell you the story of what went into our newly released game, 7 p.m., and its larger place in the story of our studio. So 7 p.m. follows 3 kids who find out that they have a new neighbor in their apartment block, and they decide to try and invite this new kid to play with them. But they soon realize that there's more to this neighbor. There's more to this neighbor and their home than meets the eye, and not in a good way. So like I said, I'm not going to go too deep into that, but instead I'm going to talk about how we got to this point. So this all began 2.5 years ago, in early mid 2017, when Cellar Vault Games was actually working on another project, which we put on hold for the time being. But at the time, we'd taken on a new engineer who had no experience working in Unreal Engine. And we decided that to sort of give him something to figure out the tools, like where he could get his hands dirty, we would work on a small game jam-like project. And in the process, we would also use that as an opportunity to explore another style of game from what we were doing. We definitely wanted it to be horror, and we definitely wanted it to be narrative-based, but definitely not photorealistic, which was how we had worked on the thing that we were working on. So we talked about it, and it came down to a 2 weeks kind of development timeline. We were going to use game jam rules for how we would work on it, meaning no polishing, no finishing, just first impressions, get it working. And the source inspiration was going to be this amazing thing called Just Paper, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But suffice it to say, we took the 2 weeks, and 2 weeks later, we had Long Road Ahead. And Long Road Ahead was a kind of visual novel meets adventure meets creepypasta type game. It's about an unsettling story about a couple's short bike ride through a dark road on the way to the in-laws' house. And it had an average playtime of like 7 to 10 minutes. And it was presented in this peculiar style of papercraft set pieces and characters that you can see here. So like I said, the visual style here is based on Just Papercraft. And this is a really, really cool thing that I did a bunch of research into. It's basically this concept that you'll see in a lot of Chinese Buddhist communities across Southeast Asia, which is an expression of filial piety, where you burn paper imitations of wealth, effigies. It could be currency or gold, and you burn them to send them into the afterlife for your ancestors. And what's really cool is that these possessions range from relatively simple to things like these hand-rolled gold ingot imitations to really, really complex, like these big paper mansions, including things like paper imitation consumer electronics, vehicles, and even servants to take care of your ancestors where they live now. And so suffice to say, this was all really, really elaborate and really, really cool. And it gave the background of Long Road Ahead a very, very interesting position where if you came from a Chinese community in Southeast Asia, you would immediately see the significance of that. And people played it and they said they felt very represented and very seen. And people who played it who came from a Western context said that it was really unusual and really exciting in that way. And this is kind of interesting because I sort of sit personally at the intersection of both, because while I was born in Malaysia and I lived my whole life here, due to a weird schooling situation, I kind of only speak English and I barely speak Malay, which is the local language. and I especially don't speak any Chinese dialects. And it's just the height of irony that I'm part of a team that's working on a Chinese themed game, and I regularly have to ask my co-founder for translations. So we took it to a bunch of game dev hangouts, and it got a pretty good response. And we decided to enter it into Level Up KL 2018's SEA Game Awards, and it was nominated for Best Visual Storytelling. And right now, we published it and put it on itch.io, where it still sits. So like I said, we got a bunch of response, and we knew we were onto something, but unfortunately at that time, we also were working on a whole other full-scale projects, and we didn't have the resources or manpower to do both at once. So we shelved it. We shelved it and continued to work on that other thing. Cut to early 2020. We had just finished work on the other project, and we had a bit of time, and we thought to ourselves, hey, this thing has been sitting in a drawer this whole time, and it really excited everyone and excited us. Let's give it a go. So we got it back out, and I did some environment design, some concept work, and visual development to really figure out the space that we wanted this to take place in, and also some of the characters that we wanted to inhabit this environment. And note that while we hadn't been working on this, we did have time to think about it. So we had a much clearer idea about the kind of game that we wanted to make. And we also had the privilege of working with some amazingly talented engineers. And that allowed us room to focus on like what kind of specific gameplay we wanted to integrate alongside the core gameplay mechanic that we had. And so that gave me a chance to do a lot of weird pre-visualizations in what was essentially the digital version of a paper notepad, and tearing up those pieces of paper and like having them act out weird fantasies, which is what you see before you hear. So I'm actually gonna roll a short clip. There's no sound, so you don't need to worry about that. And it kind of showcases some parts in 7 PM that visually I'm really proud of. But it also highlights something that I think was very important to us when we made this, and when we make a lot of our games, is that we wanted to make sure that 7 PM and the whole like short creepy tale theme was gonna happen on a very convincing background of modern everyday life in Malaysia. And some of the way this is expressed is small things like this nasi lemak mini game where you have to pack food at a stall inside the apartment block for a middle-aged woman who is taking orders over her cracked cell phone. And that's like sort of one of the side things, but it also gets a little bit more involved where you meet someone later on who teaches you how to fold a paper ingot for burning for your ancestors. And overall, the commonality was that we wanted to make sure that it would represent the unique atmosphere of Malaysia in both of its mundane familiarity and its particular strangeness. And that kind of leads into something else that that we kind of always had in mind from the moment we started working on Long Road Ahead, which is that we wanted it to be an anthology series. We wanted to be able to jump out of, we didn't want to be stuck with one story. We wanted to explore different stories, different people's experiences in this region, different themes and different superstitions. And we even considered for a time like how it would be kind of cool to have like players and users sort of tell us about their personal ghost story experiences and have those show up in episodes, kind of like ghost stories that you tell at a sleepover or that you hear from elders at a late night family gathering. So needless to say that we're far from finished with what we want to do with this series. We've only just begun, and we've still got a lot to learn about how to do this on a larger scale. So if you like what you've seen, 7 PM is now available for purchase on Steam and itch.io, the indie darling. And we especially want to know what you think, especially kind of a call out to a very, very specific audience here. But if you were Malaysian and you migrated to Australia, you're kind of, a lot of people have seen this and sort of said, oh, this makes me feel like home. And that's just really, really, really touching in a weird way because it's a horror game. So yeah, we definitely want to hear from you. And thank you so much for listening. And I want to hand this back to Chad, but first I want to say I was not told how cool all the other presenters were going to be on this panel before I accepted. So yeah, salty about that. But thank you so much, Chad. And I'm going to hand this back to you.
Thank you so much. Oh, the game, can I just say the game looks astonishing. It like, you know, the studio's done such an excellent job, and you should definitely be proud.
Thank you.
For anyone who hasn't checked it out, definitely hit it up on Steam or itch.io. I think there's just a massive amount of talent coming out of Southeast Asia, and I feel blessed that I have managed to visit the region and check out some of the cool games happening. So thank you for all the amazing work.
We look forward to having you back once quarantine's over.
Yes. All right. So you can kind of hear my cat meowing in the background, but we've made it to the very end of the night. What a magical night full of wonderful talks and lovely people. I've been flicking through the chat, the live chat on YouTube in between talks and visiting the zone, and it's been nothing less of wholesome. And I'm so glad that you could all make it, and so humbled that you're all part of this community. It brings me so much joy to highlight so many amazing and wonderful games and artists that are you know, emerging in the independent games community, both here in Australia but also beyond. And it's just been super inspiring to witness all the amazing experimental work that's come up in the community across the years that I've been director of Free Play. And yeah, we've got something super special happening here, and I just want to encourage you all to keep making weird, experimental and heartfelt games. Don't feel like making commercial games is the only avenue to making video games, and I'd really encourage you to start thinking about what it means to be making games as a creative or an arts practice. Just thank you so much for to the whole Free Play community. Thank you to our sponsors, RMIT, the Capital, Creative Victoria, Melbourne International Games Week. Thank you to the Free Play and Parallels team. Thank you to all the speakers for trusting Free Play with your time, and for speaking about your games and your projects and your journeys from a place of honesty and vulnerability. Thank you to the Free Play board for their continued support, and to everyone who bought support passes. Thank you so much. Before you all leave, please take a moment to fill in our feedback form. And it really makes a difference to hear your thoughts and opinions on the evening. I hope to see you all at Free Play 2021. Hopefully it'll be COVID free by then. We're looking at June as the date for the festival. And after party will be at the Parallel Zone. So hopefully I'll see you all there shortly. Thank you so much, and hope you have a lovely evening.